Hello and welcome to yet another edition of the ArenaCraftPodcast, a show focused exclusively on Magic the Gathering, Arena, and nothing else ever. My name is Arjuna. I'm one of your hosts, joined by the legendary, the one and the only, one and best of one, Covert Go Blue. How are you doing today, my friend?
After that amazing introduction, I'm just walking a little bit taller, a little bit prouder, feeling good. Feeling excited to be here on another episode of my favorite, not close, MTG arena-focused podcast, the ArenaCraftPodcast.
I mean, I feel like we've got to be the best arena-focused podcast out there, right?
I can think of a few that threw arena in the title. I can't think of any that actually come out here and go, by the way, we're focused on arena as often as the arena-focused ArenaCraft podcast says it.
You know, when you're the only game in town, you are the best game in town. We don't need to cover that also makes us the worst game in town, so we won't go there. But anyway, we have some hot topics for you today. If you've been paying any kind of attention to any of the usual news outlets for Magic, you will know that there was a massive organized play announcement that happened this past week. And so we're going to discuss that somewhat today. We're not, like, spoiler alert, we're not going to go super deep on that. So don't worry if that's not a topic that is like exciting to you. We're also going to talk about Historic Anthology 5. Because we've basically gotten the whole thing revealed now. So that's
new
exciting.
Cards. Every week is new card week.
New cards. I mean, didn't I say last episode, right at the end, like, we'll meet next week to talk about new cards?
We will, and we are.
Here they are. So we have that to look forward to.
New old cards. New old cards this time.
New old cards, indeed. But first, Covert Go Blue. You only get to first things one time, right?
Okay. Yes, that's right.
And we have another first for the ArenaCraftPodcast today.
Yep.
So sit down wherever you are, listener. Sit down, brace yourself. This is going to
Stay sitting down if you're doing that already. This is
sit down more.
This is an earthquake.
So the people have spoken. For over a year now that I've been running this podcast, people have been asking, and we are finally giving the people what they want. We have created an ArenaCraftPodcast Patreon, and now's your time, crafties. I know, right? This is like an angels singing moment.
Editors, do something cool.
So I'll say, like, probably like every week to every other week, I would say, since this podcast like started to get any kind of momentum, I've had someone either, you know, in my Twitch chat or just in Discord or emailing me saying, how can we support the show? How can we support the show? And I've put this off for a while for a couple of reasons. Number one, you know, this is not my first rodeo in the podcasting world. And I learned from my last podcast that you don't really capitalize much on running a Patreon or the time it takes to set it up and maintain it or whatever until you reach a certain point. And so that point has been reached. And like, it's not a trivial thing to set one up, and it's not a trivial thing if you're actually delivering to your community to like keep one going. So I really appreciate the people who have expressed the interest in contributing over the years. And we've not been ignoring you, and it's just that the kind of the time investment versus reward is finally to a point where it's going to be really positive in that regard. So I mean, I'm stoked. I'm actually pretty stoked about this.
Yeah, I can tell. You're like you're Steve Jobs launching the iPhone up here. You're like you actually love it so much, but you're finding the words to like get into it. But I want to take. Can I grab the mic for a second?
Yeah, jump in, man.
So, Arjuna, you started this podcast basically on your own from scratch. You were kind of the one guy podcast for a while. After like 3 or 4 months, something like that, you invited me to join the show. And for the last over a year, It's definitely been over a year. It's been like a year and like 3 or 4 months. With me taking, I think, 1 or 2 breaks, we've been here week in and week out through some pretty interesting times. And we've always called this like a passion project. I know it is for me. I love being on a podcast. I love talking with you. And you do so much of the work. You do the editing. You are the show behind the show. And you make a really good show. And you put a lot of pride into it. But you never made it about the money. And we've both talked about it. It's still not just about the money. It's not like we have to do this or we're not going to do a podcast. It's the passion that you have for talking about this and making a great show. And people have responded to that and they've said, we love this. We don't want it to go away. We want more of this. How can we help? And so you put in the work and like you made a really sweet Patreon page. It's live right now. The ArenaCraftPodcast on Patreon with some sweet benefits. And I think that you deserve a moment to take a bow because you built this from just a thought in your head, and you deserve a ton of credit. So I'm giving you a little round of applause. I'm proud of you. And people, if you appreciate it like I do, now is the time where you have a place to show it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. And it does highlight the fact that this is first and foremost something that I look forward to every week, And so like, I really believe that, and I think that you would say this too, that like, in order to have the drive to produce content, you need to be your own biggest fan, right? And it's like you need to look at what you make and be like, damn, that's really cool,
Oh yeah.
And and I can see that in your channel, right? That like you've really, just this kind of years of pride that you've put into this, and it's hard work, but it's also just like actually liking it, and actually like producing something that you're excited about. So that, and I think it's one of the reasons why I think you and I work well together is that we both share that passion. And having said that, like, it's true that, like you're a successful content creator, you could probably be spending this time making more money if money was your goal. I'm a self-employed person, and I make my money in my career by being a go-getter and going out and getting clients and stuff like that. And so if I was just all about the money, I'd probably just spend more time doing that. So it's not all about the money for us. But having said that, you reach a point when you're doing something where like if it's not bringing in any money, it starts to be kind of a drag, right? And and you start to be thinking like, what else could I be doing with my time? You start to be wondering, and especially if you go through a period where money is tight, or maybe you want to make a big investment, you want to buy a house, or just I don't know, something comes along, you all of a sudden start thinking a little bit more about where you're putting your time. And so one of the things that makes Patreons really awesome is that it helps to not have that be a conversation, right? It helps to put like, okay, maybe this isn't like the most profitable thing I'm doing. If it does become that, then that's amazing, right? But if not, it's just like that it like covers the base and it makes it so you don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
So here's my ask for you, crafties. You've been enjoying this show now for up to a year and a handful of months for free. And if you have enjoyed this show so far, we would both greatly appreciate it if you'd swing by our Patreon and sign up. So a lot of podcasts do their Patreons on a per episode basis. I decided to set this one up on a monthly basis because like we release a lot of extra content. And, sometimes during spoiler season, we release like 4 or 5 episodes in a week. And I don't want people to worry like, oh, man, that's going to hit my bank account. Right?
Yeah.
So
without question, I like the way it's set up. Yeah.
So I just wanted to make it simple. You just go there. You don't have to worry about it. It starts at, the Patreon starts at $3 a month. And for those of you willing to do math, that is less than $1 an episode. So that's a pretty good deal, right? It's a pretty good deal. And then it goes up from there. And we have some sweet rewards. I'm not going to like go all into it right now. I'm not going to like just read down the list because I would love it if you would just go and take a look, just check it out. So spoiler alert, we've set it up with a cat theme. So the first Patreon tier is a cool cat, and it goes all the way up to an S tier cat. So just go check it out. It's a fun time. I think you'll enjoy it. The rewards are sweet. And you get just like sneak preview. We've made a couple of different Discord roles. We have like a kind of a basic patron, and then we have like an elite patron. And here's another thing that I want to say as well, is that this is just kind of the beginning. The Patreons are an evolving art form, as it were, and as more things happen, as we grow the show, as more things become available, I'm definitely thinking about adding on stuff to the Patreon, increased rewards. So it's kind of cool because like if you sign up now, not only are you getting whatever benefit you sign up for, but you're also signing up for whatever other stuff we decide to do in the future. So
welcome to the ground floor. Yep.
That's it, man. Getting in on the ground floor, which is kind of what keeps projects like this going along, is cool people being willing to be like, all right, I'm coming in now, going to support this, and I'm going to be kind of moving towards what this could be, or, what I'd like for this to be.
I also, any time I talk about monetary support on my channel, I always throw this in, and I think you'll agree. If you can't afford to support the channel, I don't want you to feel left out or feel shamed in any way. Listening to or watching the show is supporting the content. So never feel like that you're not enough. If you actually listen to or watch the content, you are supporting the content. If you can afford to, if you have a few extra bucks and you're wondering whether or not to upgrade your Netflix to 4K or do something like this, give it some thought.
Yep, absolutely. And here's another thing too, is that the revenue that we make from this podcast, we've been making a little bit from CGB's YouTube channel and of course from the Patreon. And we're basically like, after expenses, we're splitting that right down the middle. So, don't worry about like where that money is going. It's going to both of us. Another cool thing is that money goes towards stuff like paying our editor, sweet YouTube editor who is currently Bottle Brush, has been doing an amazing job. Yep. Been doing cool stuff such as putting those card images on the videos. Bottle Brush was actually doing that for free because just being a boss, right? Up until recently. So when you contribute to our Patreon, you get to support cool people like Bottle Brush to do extra cool stuff for us. And it just helps for us to, if we have a cool idea in the future, what if we did this? What if we expanded like that? What if we offered these features, et cetera, et cetera? Yep. Like, the Patreon is a place where we go to look like, oh, cool, can we fund that? Do we have something to work with when we want to do that? So there's just a lot of aspects of running content that require money, basically. And CGB and I have been putting our own cash into it. And so anyway, when people chip in, it just gives us a lot more to work with, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of options.
It does. So, but yes, basically, this is a moment for us to just be grateful to the community. Thank you so much to all of you for showing up, for listening, for supporting. Occasionally we have amazing people like Clicks just like roll through my Twitch streams and just like make it rain and throw out a bunch of subs, right?
Yep, good guy.
And yep. Solid human being, that Clicks. And so anyway, so for folks like that, this is a great place that you can go, to just like give some consistent support. I don't always stream on Twitch. So if you enjoy the fact that like this podcast keeps going and, organize and all that kind of stuff, then this Patreon is a great way to do that. Okay. I think that we've hyped it enough. But if you go to patreon.com/, hold on, let me let me make sure I have the right URL here. I'm still getting used to this.
Yeah, it's patreon.com /ArenaCraftPodcast. Just the way you'd expect it to be.
Yep. Yes, just exactly what it should be. So just go there. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes as well. CGB will have that in the YouTube description. So yeah, just go show your support. And again, like CGB said, if you can't do that right now, just keep listening, keep being a cool person. We love having you. All right. So moving along here. We usually do a lightning round question of the week. And this week, I'm rolling it into a topic that we wanted to talk about anyway. So basically, let me get that up here as well. So Symphonias asks opinions of WotC shutting down the MPL, ? Any hopes for what the future of competitive Magic will look like? So this is definitely one of the hot topics in the Magic world today. And Covert Go Blue, I want to throw this one over to you. Maybe you can just explain to people a little bit like what the announcement was and just help take us into some of the ramifications of that.
Okay. In an announcement on the magic.gg site called Esports, Transitions, and Getting Back to Gathering, Wizards outlined basically a lot of things saying that they're excited. It's a lot of words that amounts mostly to we're going to get back to doing paper Magic, and we're going to do it where and when it's safe, depending on world conditions and a lot of things. And we're not really ready to show you all of the plans of all the whens and wheres of paper Magic, but it does involve getting back to local play and local tournaments, regional tournaments, and also some large gathering tournaments that probably won't be ready for a while until the world is ready. Almost as if like this was a lot of words to prep you for some bad news that you might take in a bad way. Near the end, they say that the Rivals and MPL are not going to have another season after the 21-22 season, which is a huge announcement for a lot of reasons.
Big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. The MPL and Rivals were created as part of the Magic esports push and designed to be the pinnacle of competitive Magic play, the top achievement that you could reach as a Magic the Gathering professional. And it came with a salary as well as invites to all these tournaments and fees just that were paid just for playing in these tournaments. It was, in many ways, the dream, Magic as a career. And they have essentially said that's coming to an end after, I think it will have been 3 years when they play out the season that we're in, which isn't very long, to be honest. It's not long. So that is kind of the nuts and bolts of what is happening. And I wanted to talk about it today from the perspective of what this means for Arena, because we're the ArenaCraftPodcast. There are wonderful podcasts out there if you want to go deep on this subject, made by people who were really involved in competitive Magic and really involved in the MPL. Straight up MPL members have podcasts on this. So you can hear a lot of ins and outs of this there. For the typical player playing on Arena, how to interpret this corporate speak and this decision. Does it mean that like pro Magic is going away? In a sense, but I think that there will still be a lot of tournaments, and it sounds very much from this announcement that Wizards plans to focus a lot of attention on paper Magic. And I think what that means for Arena is when Arena came out and the MPL came out and the esports push began, this was treated as the future of Magic, that Magic someday will be mostly digital on Arena and played in front of, millions of people for millions of dollars. Like that is basically what they set us up for with their The World Will Know advertising and Sir Mix-a-Lot and the Mythic Invitational and the sparklers and the fireworks when people walked out onto the stage and all the things that they did, and the esports team jackets and the Omen sponsorships and the Alienware, all this stuff. And I think that this announcement is dialing all that way back. And I think that what they're saying is that Magic Arena, they don't see it anymore as the future of Magic. They see it as another way to play Magic. And that's what I'm getting from this, especially when it comes to competitive play. It sounds to me like they're saying, we learned from this experience that esports thing is hard, and what we're great at is paper. and we're going to go in on paper. Magic Arena will be there as a thing you can do to qualify for the paper tournaments. There might still be sometimes Magic Arena competitive tournaments, but for the most part, that MPL fireworks esports big money thing, that I don't think they're doing that anymore. I think this is the end, if you want to stamp it, the end of the esports era for Magic Arena.
Yeah, that's what I read in this too. And okay, so it's sad for a couple of reasons, right? On the one hand, they're absolutely right. They are incredibly good at making a paper card game. In fact, like, they might be the best to do it. They might be the best ever to have done it, right? I mean, so, polishing your trophies in a sense and just continuing to focus on the thing you do best is, it's a smart thing for a company to do in general. And Magic, Wizards also does have a history of having subpar digital offerings. And so this is also just kind of in line with that as well. It's like the digital offerings have never been that great. I think what makes me sad about the whole thing is that Arena, could be different, right? Arena could be like the thing that really changes that. And I think one of the reasons people were so thrilled about Arena when it was first released is that it was like, whoa, holy heck, like, this is kind of a Hearthstone looking platform. Like, this could actually go somewhere, right? So even though it was scrappy and, had a lot of kinks to be worked out, the bones of it was like surprisingly good. And the first draft of it was surprisingly good. And I think that that's what sparked so much of this momentum in the first place. And so to think that all of that potential, I mean, okay, so let's get real. Like, they're not going to abandon Arena as long as it is a profitable venture for them.
And it really is.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, they could continue just doing the absolute bare minimum and it would be a totally fine, profitable venture for them, right? And we've seen this, like, with Magic Online, for example. Magic Online, as far as I know, has never been like a main driver of revenue for Wizards, and they've kept supporting it. And I think the reason is simple, because it just continues to make them money, so it's worth it. But I totally agree. Like, it's a little bit rough to see this, like, what was such an amazing possibility spring up, and to see them really putting a lot of effort into it, and then to just see them suddenly, like, left turn on it, right? To just like, or basically like do a 180, just flip right around on it and be like, nah, we're good. We tried that. We're good. So I think that, you and I, and probably other people who are thinking about the future of Arena, are probably a little bit concerned about this, right? Because we were just hoping to see more money, frankly, put into the client, right? We were hoping to see things like these server issues that just happened on the most recent Arena Open weekend, right? Which is, I mean, that's a whole topic that we could go into, which we don't really need to, but suffice it to say, when people are spending their hard-earned money, it costs what? It's like 4,000 gems or something to get in on the Open, which is like real money.
To play a real competitive event with a real cash prize. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So not only, if something goes wrong, not only are you potentially out the money that you put into it, but you're also potentially out the money you could have reasonably expected to make as well. So stuff like that, when I read this announcement, it makes me feel like stuff like that is not likely to change anytime soon. Like, do you think that that's a reasonable assessment?
100%. I think that expecting the Arena client to be updated to better handle competitive structure isn't realistic when they're cutting off the the thing that they designed to be kind of the pinnacle of competitive play on Arena. The MPL and Arena very much came hand in hand, and the MPL has done almost all of their events, aside from, I think, 3 paper Pro Tours in 2019. On Arena. I feel like the MPL was created to sell Arena, and much like a lot of things that were there very early on in Arena, like they were constantly developing. The state of the game articles were fixing this, and they had roadmaps and things like that. And slowly those things have all faded away to new cards. Just get cards on Arena. That's the job of the development of Arena at this point. And then even when they break the game, when they like violate their rules engines and things like that, and you don't get the hot fix the next day anymore, you get like a month of, I mean, I hear that you still can't use historic sideboards in like direct challenge for tournaments. You still have to register them as limited decks because of the sideboard bug. Like, what?
Yeah.
And when I see an announcement like this, that's what I think. I think that things like spectator mode are just not going to happen. Things that would polish up the client and make it better for a competitive tournament scene are not going to happen. That Arena is a product designed to sell cards. It's a pipeline, and that what they believe in like competitive play to be, they see it going back to paper. That's my takeaway from most of this.
Yep, I agree. And so it has interesting ramifications. So for example, one of the biggest deals with Arena, and specifically the Arena competitive scene, is that it really opened up competitive Magic to the world. So
yeah.
You know, I mean, if you think about like if you live in North America and you want to play in Magic tournaments, there's high profile tournaments that happen all over North America. And so it's not that big of a deal to go to one of them in paper, right? But it's still kind of rough. You got to buy a plane ticket, you got to get a hotel room, you got to all of these other extraneous expenses, food and whatever, and you got to take your entire weekend off to go there. It's still kind of a big deal to participate in one of these tournaments. Now imagine what it's like to live in South America, or to live in Africa, or to live in, Southeast Asia, and to contemplate going to Magic tournaments. It's, the plane tickets are 2 to 3 times as much. Your access to the cards might be more limited. Your Magic cards themselves, if you're playing in paper, might cost you twice as much. You don't have access to nearly as many things like a local PTQ, for example. And so, people might have to actually get on a plane just to play in a PTQ before they can actually qualify for any kind of like other event, which they then also have to get on a plane. So it's just like, I think that people in North America take for granted how accessible Magic is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live anywhere else in the world, Arena has been a real godsend. And so, for people whose access isn't as ready, Arena has been a great way for them to play competitively and, be in the top 1,200 every month and play the MIQs and all this kind of stuff. And granted, it has not been a perfect system ever. It's been a very punishing system. There's a lot of things about it that could maybe change to make it even more accessible, but it has been a pipeline, and it's been a pipeline that a lot of international players have been using.
And but I want to clarify really quick. I don't think all those things that you described are going away. I think that the thing that goes away is at the end of the road, there's the online Arena tournament that they get to compete in. Whereas now there's going to be travel to somewhere, and it's unclear because they didn't announce it. They basically said they don't have the framework figured out. They have this amazing sentence that says we've had a lot of time because of COVID to think about this, and then they go on to say we're not ready to share any of it.
but we haven't spent any of that time thinking about what we were going to do.
So we haven't. So we don't know where that end step is now, but I don't think it will be like strictly over Arena. Obviously, it was mostly because of COVID for the last year, but I think that they have no interest in making that the way that the highest level is played is me in America battling someone from South America over MTG Arena with webcams. I think that they're off that. And there's a weird disconnect in that it's widely talked about that when Hasbro reported their public profits, Wizards and Magic had their most successful year ever, record profits. Unbelievable, right? And then there's this disconnect where it seems like digital Magic from a competitive pro standpoint mostly failed. The viewership for the MPL and the set championship events on Twitch was very low. The prizes were cut at least once. by quite a bit. It was restructured again and again. I still don't understand the system for the most part from last year. I can probably, if I try really hard, remember who won which events, but that's like most of what I have from the scene. So there's this weird disconnect where it felt like it was time in 2020 for digital Magic to step up and shine. Somehow they didn't, and somehow Magic still had record profits.
It's all those secret lairs, man. It's those freaking secret lairs, dude.
and that draws you to the conclusion of, why are we making an esports push at all? Which I think we're seeing the fallout from that. Like, we don't need an esports push. We need a competitive system that lets people ascend the ladder from their local game store to their region, to their country, to some kind of a world gathering championship, which we're not allowed to do right now. And like, most people aren't nearly as invested in watching on a high level people getting on their computers and battling each other. It's just not the same way. It doesn't draw the way that they were hoping. And I heard something pretty funny. One thing I talked about with my chat is, did the MPL have to go? Was it too far gone? And I think it was getting to the point where it was kind of embarrassing. And I don't think a rebrand could have saved it. I don't think anybody could come in and reignite an excitement around the MPL, no matter what they did. So I think it had to go. And I heard, I think it was on a podcast actually, and I'm trying to remember which one so I could credit it well, but it was a YouTube video. I heard that the Mr. Beast promotion probably got more Magic players than the MPL did for their entire 3 years.
Which I mean, I wonder if that's true, but
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, though, highlight the fact that of all the stuff that's been going on with Magic competitive play, I think it was clear to everyone that the MPL was just not it.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of makes me a little bit sad because I don't think that Wizards set out to do this, but it kind of reminds me of like when politicians, let's say politicians will oppose some popular measure, right? And then the measure will come to the floor and it becomes clear that it's going to pass anyway. So then they'll just kind of gut it, so that when it passes, they're like, oh, this thing sucks, So see, like when it comes time to, kind of reassess it, they're like, we all know this sucks. Let's take this off the floor, right? And this kind of reminds me of that a little bit, where it's like, oh, see, we can't do the esports thing. Magic just doesn't work as an esport or whatever. And it's like, no, that shouldn't be the conclusion at all. We just, the system that we were working with was a poor implementation.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I said that I keep thinking about during my Twitch show was I felt like the MPL, while it was probably conceived and that the team behind it had good intentions, from an outsider looking in, from somebody who pretty much viewed it as a consumable form of entertainment, it felt hollow and missionless. The mission was to get my money. The mission was strictly about getting more people to buy MTG Arena. And it never felt like it was something bigger or more interesting than that. It felt hollow. It like a pure marketing stunt. And I felt bad for the people who were pretty much forced to engage in it. At first, you look at them and you're like, what a life. They get paid to play Magic. That should be sweet, right? But watching them in event after event after event, and I mean, part of it's that I'm pretty deep in the scene, listening to their podcasts, watching their Twitch streams, because they were paid to be Twitch streamers for a while. Like, it just was clear that there wasn't that much soul in the idea of the MPL. It's like, well, you're here. We paid you to play Magic. Aren't you happy? And no, humans don't work that way. Humans like to be challenged. Humans like to chase. They like obstacles to overcome. And while Magic and its metas can be difficult, like when you're just invited to everything and paid just to be there, it takes the spark out of it. And it felt like there was very little spark, both in the players and the vision of the MPL a lot of the time.
So this is reminding me of the ESL. Have you, CGB, are you at all familiar with the recent controversy, which is the ESL, the European Super League?
No. What, there's other games in the world?
I know,
I'm
right?
confused.
People happen to be invested in other competitive scenes, one of which is, soccer, right? Which is perhaps the most popular sport in the world. But at any rate, so basically, the short version of the ESL is that during the pandemic, of course, sports teams all around the world were heavily impacted by the fact that, gathering large groups of people together was a bad idea. And that tends to be what happens when you have big sports, is you have large groups of people gathered together, yelling and getting little droplets on each other. So, which is kind of disturbing to think about. But so I think it was 12 or maybe 16 of Europe's largest football clubs got together and they were like, hey man, we're losing a lot of money. We need to like come up with something to try to stimulate a little bit, try to generate a little more revenue, get a little more engagement going here. And so they privately developed this thing called the European Super League, which is basically like the MPL version of high level soccer, right? Where it was, so most leagues and like basically all European leagues are set up in this way where you have like the top league. So like for the English league, it's the Premier League. And then going down from there, you have these other leagues that feed up into it, right? And so it doesn't take that much to be a team who has a shot at being the top, right? You can be like some small random club in like some, English village, and you can be in that competitive system. But in order to get to the top, you have to do a lot of winning, right? And also for people who are in the top in the Premier League, if they have a bad year, they might actually get relegated and get put down into a lower league, right? And so the European Super League was like, nah. We're just going to have like, these 12 clubs. They form the league. That's the league. And then they just play each other in different configurations. We keep score, but it doesn't really matter because it's only the same closed circuit of people in the league. So it's
nobody
basically the
can
MPL.
battle. Yeah, nobody can battle their way up and into it and challenge. The top teams are just going to be there fighting each other for the foreseeable ever.
For the foreseeable future, right? Which is, it's not exactly what the MPL was, but the MPL gave a pretty narrow path, right? It was a pretty narrow path in. I mean, you had to be like actual Chris Kavatek, like superhuman, to like grind your way into it, right?
Oh yeah.
So, so within days of this being unveiled to the public, there were like riots in the streets, the fans of all of these clubs were just like, F that, man. Like people hated it and it crashed and it burned. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just a really good analogy because I think that it's basically the Magic community has shown, these kind of ideas are bad ideas. They don't work. It's exactly like you said, it gets carried along because of the dream that anyone could end up there, right?
Yep.
And the previous season gave you a shot, and the previous system.
Yes.
Not only did it give more of the average pleb a shot of making their way into the pro scene, but it also gave you something even if you didn't make it there, right? So like, let's say that you didn't win or didn't top 8, like everything that you ever played in ever, you still got points and they still fed into this system. And so at the end of the year, you could say, well, I didn't achieve these highest goals, but I still made silver, I still made gold or whatever. And that still meant something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like go ahead.
Oh, it sounds like they're not bringing back the point system, but we might have a very similar kind of qualification path to the old one where the accomplishment can be getting to the Pro Tour. It doesn't have to be winning the Pro Tour. You got to the Pro Tour. You got to play against somebody, a Hall of Famer in round 3 or something like that. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think neither of us is trashing on paper pro Magic because both of us were like avid followers of that scene.
Still a huge fan.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, if they manage to bring that back in some form, I'm going to be really happy. Especially if they don't just like cut all the costs and make it suck somehow. But yes, I feel like the TLDR of this is that people who play Arena, I think, should be a little bit concerned about the future of the platform. And I don't know, man. I just want to be able to set my default land art. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I would love for actual quality of life improvements. And we were talking before the show. It does sound kind of like they might be headed, and some people get scared by this, on the Magic Online route where they do a refresh like every 5 years, which Arena isn't quite that old yet, where they, in one fell swoop hash out some stuff. But pretty much all the updates seem to be about new cards. Just pumping in new cards for us to buy, which I am not opposed to. I just don't know why there's a bottleneck somewhere in Arena that says we can't improve the client while we're busy programming new cards. It feels like we should get some freaking lawn chairs and some plywood and make a desk out of it, put a computer on that desk, put some programmer out of college right there and say, yo, make a default land button. And I don't know. I'm probably oversimplifying programming because I don't understand it. But it feels like at some point when you have a cash producing machine like Arena, just get a few more butts in the seats and get the job done.
Yep. Get those interns out of Deathsy's Twitch and working on the freaking UI, man.
Thank you.
And
yes.
You know what else, man? Just buy a couple more servers, dude. Like that. I mean, it's probably already hosted on AWS. Just freaking call up Amazon and just allocate those extra servers. It's gonna be okay.
Let's not do another MTG Arena Open event where the black screen is what everybody remembers. Unbelievable. But we have to, I could really go off on this. So why don't we talk about what Arena is really about, which is new cards on the client.
Indeed. Good save there, CGB. Good save. So, yes, Historic Anthology 5. Is this the full spoil, or is it just most of the spoil?
It appears to be the full. 22 is a lot. I feel like there's been 25 before. So Historic Anthology 3 had 27, Historic Anthology 4 had 25, and we're looking at 22 here in Historic Anthology 5, which I guess they could still reveal one or two more, but this is probably it. There's usually two mythics. Let's see if we have two mythics. We do. 3 mythics, actually. Okay.
3 mythics, yeah.
4 mythics. So maybe there's another common or something.
Wait, have they given us all of the Praetors?
No,
they haven't given us a white Praetor.
I don't see Norn. I don't see Elesh Norn. That would be the big one.
Dude, if Elesh Norn hit, that would be something.
That would be a talking point.
So there's a couple of cycles that they've put in this. The first we just alluded to is the Praetor cycle. These are big legendary Phyrexian kind of heads of the color, right? Heads of the house divided by color. So that's a fun, spicy thing. But the other thing that they've thrown in is these, there's a command cycle. And was this Dragons of Tarkir that they came from, or was it?
Yeah, I believe it's Dragons of Tarkir commands. It might be cons, but I think it's Dragons.
Okay, yep. So, and these commands, before we get into the nitty gritty, made a pretty big impact. These are like, several of these are like much hated cards from Magic's history. They've showed up in formats and really shaken things up. So like, pay attention to these commands. They're no small thing.
Also much loved by those who use them to abuse their opponents. Atarka's command being the first one. You know what? Do you want to go out of order and just do the command cycle?
Okay, let's do that.
All right. So we're going to start here with Atarka's command, which is a red and a green for an instant. Remember when commands were instants? Oh, baby. Choose 2. And your opponents can't gain life this turn. Atarka's command deals 3 damage to each opponent. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain reach until end of turn. And Atarka Red was a very serious competitive and a winning Pro Tour deck. I believe it won the championship the first time it was played. The Pro Tour. I can't remember the Pro Tour. I'll assume it was Dragons of Tarkir. And it was very common to choose the 3 damage to each opponent, and creatures get +1/+1. And basically for 2 mana, if you have 3 creatures, that's 6 damage from 1 spell, that's an impressive burn spell.
Dece. Yeah, very decent. Yeah, so this card is just very versatile. It's priced to move. So, I mean, here's the cool thing about a card like this is that all of the modes need to be relevant in some way. And the cool thing about a card like this is that it just has some very, very powerful text on it, right? So, like, for example, being able to put a land card onto the battlefield, like that, it's if your card is otherwise dead, then having text like that can be incredibly useful, right? Because sometimes you have these commands in your hand and that it's just a literal zero in the matchup. And so I think that a card like this being able to A, kill your opponent, B, win combat, and C, ramp you, like it's just that's the kind of versatility that makes a card a real banger, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. These commands are really good. Antarctica's command might be the best one. I'm curious to see how they'll perform in historic. Like, is this something Gruul wants to do? This can notably be cast off a Burning Tree Emissary, which is, you're always looking for something to do with that mana. But yeah, I'm curious how this lines up.
I mean, so let's think about that, right? Let's say that your turn to play is like Emissary into Atarka's command, deal your opponent 3, put another land down, right? And then next turn, you're already Ember Cleaving, or Questing Beasting, right? So, like, curves like that can just be really strong. I mean, okay, it has to take the spot of something else in the deck, and maybe you can't cough up that space. But just even right there, that's like a very reasonable thing to be wanting to do.
Yep. It's going to be a strong aggro card.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about Dromoka's command. Now, if you've ever listened to Allied Strategies, which was recently retired Magic podcast, Dromoka's command was like one of their most hated cards ever. They just like they spent like entire podcast episodes talking about how messed up this Magic card is.
That's an interesting preamble because if you read it, I think a lot of people miss like what that might be. So to hit the text on this, it's only a green and a white, so only 2 mana for an instant. With the choose 2 again, prevent all damage target instant or sorcery would deal this turn. Target player sacrifices an enchantment, or put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, or target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. And I remember a lot of their hate for this card stemming from the fact that target player sacrifices an enchantment as kind of a freebie mode, made enchantments completely... just made all enchantments unplayable. And I mean, I don't know if that's where we're going to go in historic with introducing Dromoka's command, but you have to think twice now about just throwing an enchantment in that you expect to sit on the battlefield and do something. A card like Dromoka's command was not very good against blue-white control, but if they're going to main deck Rest in Peace or Search for Azcanta, now suddenly you just hit those things just because you play Dromoka's command. On the other hand, if you're against a burn deck, preventing the damage an instant or sorcery would deal is a big deal. On the other hand, if your opponent's deck has creatures of any kind, the rate of a 2 mana instant speed +1/+1 counter and fight is really, really good. Like Savage Stomp is a sorcery, and it had to be like pretty hard nerfed to only affect dinos, and it was messed up if you played good dinos. And like it was a sorcery. Like this is a really good fight spell, possibly one of the best ever. And the first thing I think of reading this is Feather. Oh my god, Feather.
That would be messed up. Here's another thing, like, so imagine if red-based wraths are being played in the format, and just being able to like counter a red wrath with this, right? And get some, and now usually cards like it's the green instant that gives your creatures indestructible. Ajani's Intervention, is that the one?
Heroic Intervention.
Heroic Intervention, yeah. So that's a card which, like, some people have been putting into historic decks, and honestly, I personally, I don't think that card's good enough to sideboard. But this is like kind of a heroic intervention without the downside. Right now, this can't prevent like a Wrath of God, but it's just another. It's an example of a card which, like, if the meta goes a certain way, you can just like totally hose a different card type, right? So like you were saying, like this just randomly hosed enchantments. If damage based mass removal becomes a thing, this could just randomly hose that as well. So again, it's just a very, very versatile card, which and one of the benefits of cards like these is that you can pick up those little extra, like, oh my gosh, my card does that as well. So a card that you're like running main deck or running in your sideboard just gets like +10 bonus points against some random matchup.
Another one of these commands that has a similar kind of effect of just randomly hosing isn't on the list, but I did see on a site that it is spoiled for this release, so it will be in the Anthology. It's just not on the list that you're looking at right now. And that's Kolagon's command. And that is 1 and a black red with an instant status and a choose 2 once again. And it says, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, or target player discards a card. Remember, this is an instant. Or destroy target. It is. Or destroy target artifact. So just any artifacts are suddenly way more vulnerable. Or Kolagon's command deals 2 damage to target creature or player. I'm getting a lot of Prismari command vibes from the destroy target artifact and 2 damage to any target. Like, that's something I've gotten used to with Prismari command, and I very much enjoyed it. The target player discards a card is so awesome in a top deck war because you can use it during their draw step, and they don't get to play it unless it's an instant.
Yeah. It's actually, there are game states where you can just lock up a win. Like if you have your next turn win in hand, imagine a scenario where, you're a control deck, you need to top deck a Wrath in order to survive, and then your opponent just nabs that Wrath right out of your hand, right? It's, what this reminds me of? It's a little bit like when people would, they'd Teferi you, and then after your draw step, they'd Mind Erasure you. That was a really nasty combo.
Very
this
nasty.
Is kind of giving me those vibes.
It also adds an angle of hand hate to a card that if hand hate is bad, is not dead, which is one of the problems with discard decks. You just, if you're getting beaten down on the battlefield, your discard cards suck. Well, this helps you clear the battlefield and can also make them discard a card. But there's also that raise dead, return target creature from the graveyard to your hand. This is an effect that usually isn't good enough on its own. But when you staple it to a card like this, I'm excited to play this with like Torrential Gear Hulk, because you can use the Gear Hulk to bring back and cast the command to get back another Gear Hulk or to destroy the opponent's Gear Hulk, or like there's a lot you can do here.
CGB, did I just hear you talk about playing Grixis during this podcast episode?
I mean, I was going to splash probably the other colors to keep that from happening, but sure, why not? 5-color Grixis, let's go. Right.
Avowed Grixis Mage, Covert Go Blue. Confirmed. All right, well Kolagon's command sounds gas, and Rakdos is a very, very playable color combination in Historic right now, so interested to see whether that one could show up for sure. Let's hit Ojutai's command here. So this one is on brand for Covert Go Blue. 2 white, blue, instant, choose 2. Return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or you gain 4 life, or counter target creature spell, or draw a card. Control Mage, you interested in this?
Not really. I think it's too expensive.
Seems a little weak, doesn't it?
Its only real impact was in Con Standard, which was a much slower and more battlefield like reliant standard than we have now. And for Historic, it's definitely, in my opinion, too expensive. But the part that I think its best mode is return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. Do we have good targets for that we want to be playing anyway in Historic? And in Standard, there was Jace Vryn's Prodigy. And that's what this card is missing, is that blue-white kind of control creature to bring back that you want to bring back. I don't think we really have it. Maybe, like, I'm trying to think, and coming up blank. Like Dreadhorde Arcanist comes to mind, but even then, why would we play this expensive card when we would want cheap cards to play with Arcanist?
It's like, it's like the Auras deck in Historic is a deck I can think of, which is like a somewhat played Azorius deck, like non-control Azorius deck. But I don't think it's in the mood for Ojutai's Command.
No, it wants more enchantments, because that's the whole thing. You defend the thing on the battlefield, you don't buy it back. And Luris has also very much invalidated Ojutai's Command. So I think this one is less exciting.
I agree. I mean, it's like, at its best, it's like a Bone to Ash for a control deck, or maybe like a Absorb facsimile if you need the life, which is just really, neither of those cards is particularly great. Okay, and then the take us into Silumgar's Command.
It's the most expensive of these, so right away it has something working against it. It's 3 and a blue-black for a total of 5, and it's an instant, like they all are. Man, when commands were instants, dude, it's so good.
Yes.
So we're choosing 2 once again. Counter target non-creature spell, or return target permanent to its owner's hand, or target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, or destroy target planeswalker.
Yeah, this one feels like a miss to me. I think part of it is that, like, I feel like when I think about any given matchup, it's kind of hard to be getting the most out of your 2 modes on this card, right? Like, I think, like, for example, maybe your best bet in a creature matchup is that you kill 1 creature and bounce another creature, right? But for 5 mana, that's just not even particularly that great. I mean, it can certainly win games, but the problem with Historic especially is that by the time you reach 5 mana, like, you either got to be like wrathing your opponent's board or killing them with your board or doing something a little bit more impressive than 2 for 1-ing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then, maybe like, okay, if you're in a certain kind of control matchup, you counter a non-creature spell and you destroy an opponent's planeswalker. But again, it's just like, I don't know, it's like, are you really going to pull that off against a Teferi deck? I don't think so. Like, running out your 5 mana spell and expecting it to not get countered or something, it just seems like a stretch.
If I play a Dimir or a Grixis style control deck, or even Esper, it's going to be hard for me to not want to try to run 1 or 2 of these, but I probably shouldn't. And it's not that any part of the card is particularly bad, it's that 5 mana is so much.
It's a lot. Yep. Absolutely. We're just not really doing this kind of stuff. Although, granted, another sweet target for your freaking Torrential Gearhulk. So
Gearhulk is getting a chance to shine with all these cards that weren't with it in Standard. It should be fun.
Yeah, I mean, expensive instants are like really, they were really designed for that card. All right. Well, I definitely expect at least one of these to show up and be a player, and I wouldn't be surprised if multiple of them end up doing so. Next card I want to talk about here is Ancient Grudge. 1 and a red instant, destroy target artifact, flashback for 1 green mana, which just means you can cast it from your graveyard for 1 green mana.
1 card that destroys 2 artifacts, just a rock solid sideboard tool, and will definitely see play in some decks at any time that artifacts are really rearing their nasty artificial heads.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, imagine being like some random Khan deck and playing against a Gruul deck and having them slam this, and you're just like, oh god. I can just never get away with my nonsense.
Two dead Paradox engines coming right up.
Dude, and this being an instant is so savage, right? Like, think about like a flashback instant that can destroy your hard-hitting permanent is so brutal. I mean, even imagine like, someone kills your first Great Henge and then you can't even play your second Great Henge, right? Or like let's say they kill your Great Henge, you top deck an Embercleave, and you're like, what? Like, am I gonna like play this mid combat? My opponent can just flash back their Ancient Grudge. It's pretty brutal.
The thing that hurts the most is when they play their Ancient Grudge and you're like, well, okay, I'm going to play my Grafdigger's Cage and lock out the Ancient Grudge in their graveyard, and then I'm going to play my other artifact, and then they play another Ancient Grudge from their hand on the cage, and then flash it back on the artifact you hoped was safe. No!
So, yeah. Quit your messing around is basically what this card says. All right, how about Court Homunculus?
This is 1 white for a 1/1 artifact creature. An artifact creature. Court Homunculus gets +1/+1 as long as you control another artifact. This is hilarious that these are right next to each other, because you can play for 1 white a Court Homunculus that can be a 2/2 if you play another artifact next to it. And it's like, oh, cool, I got a good deal. 1 white, I got a 1 mana 2/2 creature as long as I have another artifact. And then the opponent can play Ancient Grudge and just kill them both with 1 card. Oh,
brutal. So
kind of savage.
This card is a meme, except that I would definitely throw this straight into my Tempered Steel deck.
The Tempered Steel, yeah, that deck has some hits in this anthology. They keep trying to make it happen, but also they printed Ancient Grudge and Kolaghan's Command.
So there you go. But yeah, that's like the only place I'm seeing Court Homunculus. Otherwise, just don't even bother with this card.
Are you going to bother with this next one? It's Dragon Storm. 8 and a red. So 9 total mana for this rare sorcery. Search your library for a dragon permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle, and it has Storm.
So, you spent some more of your mana that you had laying around casting another spell. Let's go. I don't know. I'm going to need for you to tell me why this card isn't just never going to see play CGB, because I can't figure it out.
Whoa, hold on. That's disrespectful. Dragonstorm has World Championship pedigree.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yes.
Well, you know what I just thought of? Okay, this is gas. Mizzix's Mastery, right? That's pretty gas. You get 2 dragons. That is very
gas. Right there, you get 2 dragons. Yep. You discard this with a Faithless Looting, and you Mastery on 4.
Talked myself into it, right? You get a Velamarcus Lorehold and you get something else and you're off to the races.
The Lorehold is pretty nasty. If you can find like a Lord or something to pump it another 2, you could Velamarcus into another Dragonstorm.
That would be pretty gas.
If there's a dragon that gives another dragon +2/+0 somehow.
No, but isn't Velamarcus a 5/5, right? So you need to give it +4.
It's the power, not the casting cost. Okay, we gotta give it +4. Big mission. Yeah. Big mission. Maybe it's doable.
It could happen. If only Craterhoof Behemoth were a dragon.
Yeah, I mean, how bad is it to get Terror of the Peaks and the other biggest dragon you can find?
Sounds good. If you're running a combo deck like this, you probably get the Terror of Mount Velis, right?
Oh no, you just get Terror of the Peaks and Terror of the Peaks.
Does that
trigger off each other?
Your opponent right there?
Well, that right there is 10. It's 10. So the third Terror of the Peaks is lethal because it sees 2 other dragons, because then it's like 30, right?
Yeah, and if your opponent doesn't have a board wipe, they're going to take 6 damage removing them as well. So, there it is. That's if you have 5 mana, you can cast Faithless Looting, discard the Dragonstorm, cast Mizzix's Mastery, target the Dragonstorm, cast the Dragonstorm, get 3 copies, get 3 terrors, game. Game. Yep. That's pretty gas. Who knows what the rest of the deck looks like, but okay. So Mizzix's Mastery single-handedly took this from meme to maybe we try to build a deck around it.
Why not? Timmy in the house.
All right, this next card, I think you were actually just rapping about this recently. Grizzly Salvage, black-green, instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or land card from among them into your hand, put the rest into your graveyard. This card has a lot of potential.
Rapping about this? You're going to have to explain.
Okay, I'm being a little clever there, but you brought this up as a very solid alternative to another card that we were talking about recently.
Oh, right. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but Grizzly Salvage, we did talk about if it got printed, because this was a staple from one of the Ravnicas, I think Return to Ravnica.
Yeah.
And I played it in so many black-green decks. And as for a black and a green at an instant speed, which is really nice, getting to dump like 4 cards into the graveyard and put 1 creature or land into your hand is a really good rate. And there's probably going to be some fun graveyard decks that want to play this. I think we talked about this with like Blex, right? You had to pay like a lot of life with Blex to impersonate this card. Yeah.
That's what it was. Yep. So the cool thing about this card is it actually puts 5 cards into the yard, because Grizzly Salvage itself goes to the yard.
Yep.
And that's just a lot of freaking cards in the yard. I mean, like, you know, if you're running Jund, that like basically turns on a Croxor right there. I mean, I don't know if this fits into any existing shells, but it's the kind of card that could actually enable a new shell, you know? Like imagine if you play this and you also play the Stitches Supplier, you know, like that's the start of a very powerful graveyard deck right there.
They just have to give us the Delve cards and the Dredge cards, and it's game over, man. Game over.
Could we be seeing like a Titan's Nest in Historic deck?
Oh, that could be a ton of mana. Yeah. Why not?
Could be a thing, right? I mean, Historic has a pretty wide card pool with some pretty nasty payoffs.
Mm-hmm. A lot of time warps.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Sultai. You could even throw in a couple copies of Ultimatum as a top ender. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's memeing, but this card's definitely powerful. Definitely could enable some stuff.
I can see a Praetor I'm going to cast, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay, all right. How about Intangible Virtue?
1 and a white for an enchantment that gives all creature tokens you control +1/+1, and they have vigilance. Did you know this card was banned in Block Constructed before a game was even played?
I didn't know that, but I believe it.
Yeah, Lingering Souls was in that block and was considered a powerful card at the time. And Intangible Virtue plus Souls was deemed too strong and for that format. What does this do in Historic? Do we have a ton of tokens somewhere?
I can't think of like a competitive tokens deck or a tokens deck that was near being competitive and needing something like this to put it over the top. This is a powerful card. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if this spawned a new archetype. I don't think it would necessarily be tier 1. Remember, we also have the other 1 and a white pump enchantment.
Rally the Ranks.
And what does that one say? Is that non-token, though?
Rally the Ranks was choose a creature type, I believe.
Oh,
it might have been non-token, but I thought it was type.
So you could actually get like a 6 to 8 copies of this in your deck and just freaking go off, right? Get some kind of like spirit deck going. I don't know. I'm just pulling something out of the air.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about this one being as popular.
Yeah. How about like Thopters? Maybe we have some kind of Psi Master Thopterist deck.
You've got the Kaladesh cards. Get on it. It sounds like a standard deck that we're forcing into Historic, to be honest.
I agree. Yeah, I think the power level is probably not there. You have to be doing something pretty busted, I think, for this to be competing in Historic. Speaking of busted, Ica Wellspring. 2 mana artifact. When Ica Wellspring enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card.
Are you memeing with that busted, or do you have some backup for that?
Well, this humble artifact formed the backbone of a very, very broken and difficult combo deck. Well, it wasn't the backbone, but it was part of the backbone of the KCI deck, Krark Clan Ironworks. And this card does combo well with another card that we do have in Historic, the Scrap Trawler. Mm-hmm. You can produce some pretty nasty loops with cards like this and Scrap Trawler. So I don't think Ica Wellspring is going to, at this moment, make waves in Historic, but that 2-card combo combined with a few other things can start going off real hard.
How do we sacrifice it?
In the KCI deck, I'm not sure.
How do we... So is there something that you can think of in Historic that does it? I mean, I don't want to play Doom Foretold. That's way too slow.
No. Pia Nalar can sacrifice this. She's in historic.
There's got to be something. Like, there's got to be some good ideas. Oh, wait. There's one coming up. Trash for Treasure. It curves perfectly. Should we just do Trash for Treasure right now?
Yeah. Read that one.
So it's 2 and a red sorcery, and it says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
We did it. We built a red divination. Let's go.
Yes. But I mean, I think the idea here, like, think about the curve. You can go turn 1 Faithless Looting and discard whatever artifact you want to go crazy with, Timmy. Discard God Pharaoh's Gift, discard Platinum Angel, whatever. Turn 2, you can play the Ichor Wellspring, draw a card. Turn 3, cast Trash for Treasure, sacrifice a Wellspring, draw a card, and get back whatever that nutty card was.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool little thing. And then later on in the game, you can Yorion to draw more cards.
You could also die to Muxus the very next turn.
You could. That never happened to CGB.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad.
So yeah, Ichor Wellspring is like one of those janky cards that sits in the unplayable pile until just the right deck comes along, and then sometimes like takes place in a busted deck that gets banned. So
very true. Do you want to do the Praetor cycle, or do you want to do the things around it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and hit the Praetors.
All right, Praetor.
So,
let's go.
Yep, Jin Gitaxias Core Augur, which has to just be one of the coolest names for a Magic card ever, by the way. This is a 10-drop. Yes, that's right. 8 blue for a legendary creature Praetor at Mythic. It is a 5/4, so it doesn't pass the vanilla test. It has flash. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. Well, hello, precious. All right. I'm in.
They're not done.
And then each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7, which is also incredibly gas. So
what?
Okay. So on its face, the 2 dream scenarios, right, are like you play this second main, draw 7 cards, or you play this in at your like the beginning of your opponent's end step, you flash it in, and they discard their whole hand.
Oh my lord, that's so intense. So this was the card I was reading when we were talking about the Titan's Nest Grizzly Salvage to make a lot of mana. This is something I would do with that.
Dude, this is a freaking payoff, man. I mean, imagine just paying blue for this. Yes, please.
On their end step, making them discard down to 0. That's insane. And then on your end step, you draw 7. That game's over. If there's no Doom Blade to stop these shenanigans, that game is over on the spot.
Right.
And I love it. You can also look at it from a reanimation angle if you want to try to play Reanimator. Unburial Rites is in the format. This is going to go for all the Praetors. Like, this is the cycle. This is what they do. They are big, flashy, mythic creatures that have really whack effects on end steps and upkeeps. That's what they're here for.
So here's a question I have. If you can reanimate a creature, would you rather reanimate Jin Gitaxias, or would you rather get Ulamog?
I'm a draw cards kind of guy. I'm on that Jin Gitaxias, maybe.
Well, that's what I'm saying, man. Is that like there are a number of situations in which Jin is getting you a lot more than Ulamog is. Especially
Ulamog's getting exiled, baby. That's all he gets exiled.
He does, and if you don't cast him, you're kind of missing half of the appeal anyway. So, yeah, I would not be surprised if Jin Gitaxias became like a choice reanimate or cheat into play target. I mean, this card is frickin' powerful, man.
It's very sweet, too. For a drawing cards mage like me, it's the blue Praetor that I always wanted.
Also, you can fetch this up with Emergent Ultimatum.
And Natural Order if that's ever unbanned.
There you go. Yep. So yeah, Jin Gitaxias gets an A+ for definitely going to be fun to try to get that into play somehow. All right, why don't you hit Shale Dread, Whispering One?
This is 5 black for a Praetor. It's a 6/6 Swamp Walker. At the beginning of your upkeep,
Wait. What keyword is on this card?
Swamp Walk. What? Have we forgotten?
When were these cards printed? Were these cards printed in like 98?
Yeah, probably.
What? Man.
New Phyrexia.
When?
By the way, New Phyrexia, when was that? I don't know. Like a million years ago, okay? In the Dark
half
Ages.
Of our listeners were born, man.
So Swamp Walk means that if your opponent controls a swamp, you can't block this card. Same with Island Walk is if they control an island, you can't block it. Just picture it casually strolling through their swamp directly to the opponent's face to slap them.
Or in this case, like eat them with your big belly monster.
Anyway, God, this card is disturbing.
Sorry, CGB. I couldn't let that one slip by without, commenting.
No, that's all. It's just 7 mana for a 6/6 Swamp Walker. That's a Praetor. That's all. And there's this text about, at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay. It's a reanimation target that keeps reanimating. It also says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature.
All right. So this is like this is what old Magic players thought was a powerful Magic card.
Yeah, this is not the greatest Praetor in a modern sense in any way. This is a very medium one. I think that's why they stamped the Swamp Walk onto it.
Just end the game the old-fashioned way, I guess.
Yeah.
This is just not this ain't what I'm reaching for. Yeah, It's unfortunate, but maybe it is actually fortunate because it is some of the more disturbing art I've ever seen on a Magic card.
Yeah. But we can go to the next Praetor instead, which is less disturbing, but probably way more powerful. This is Urabrask the Hidden. Take it away, Arjuna.
All right. 3 red for a 4/4 legendary creature Praetor. Creatures you control have haste. Creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. I don't know. Do you think it's going to make a splash in Historic?
This card comes up here and there again and again in combo decks that somehow put multiple creatures either from the deck or from the graveyard into play because it can give them all haste so that they can all do their thing right away. So it is a good combo card. I don't think it's a good individual card.
I guess in a deck like that, it's better than your, what's that janky wall that people are using to do that right now?
The Crushing Drawbit Bridge?
Yeah. Also,
Crashing
this is another one.
Yeah.
The Ikaria one.
The problem with that, I forgot the name. It starts with a T. Anyway, the problem with that is you have to play the 3-drop to fit in the Neoform deck, and that's where that wall is good. Because it gives all of the dual caster mages haste in the Neoform deck. And it specifically has to be a 3-drop or you can't tutor it up.
Right. Yeah. So Urabrask, and of course Urabrask is just a better Magic card on the face of it. So if you have to unironically play it, this card can still kill your opponent, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so I see this as a combo card, and probably not to be played in any other part of Historic.
It's a very fun commander card, so I imagine Historic Brawl, if it becomes a more push format, will enjoy this card, but we'll see. It's definitely a better multiplayer card than individual. Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, a powerful Magic card. I think any red aggressive mage would love to have it on the battlefield. It's just that, we can also be playing cheaper cards, which are also really impactful. Let's see. We already read Vorinclex Voice of Hunger last time. So we did. That completes the Praetor cycle here.
It's not on the list and it's not announced for the set, but there is one more Praetor that got left out. I don't know if it's actually going to be there or not, but Elesh Norn has always been kind of the big hit Praetor of the cycle, and I'm curious. I'm curious if it's going to show up.
Dude, it would be kind of a ripoff if they didn't give us Elesh Norn, right?
They've already got 4 mythics in there. I don't know. This would be a lot of mythics in a Historic Anthology at this point. But
why would they leave it out, though?
I mean, Norn is the best one, and somebody needs to hose Muxus a lot. I want to hose Muxus really bad.
Well, okay, so the people are probably wondering, like, can you read Elesh Norn for us?
Sure, I got it. It's 5 white white, so it is 7 mana, but don't forget those unburial rights, kids. It is a 4/7 vigilance. Other creatures you control get +2/+2, and creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. Man,
Now,
man.
if that doesn't seem like much to you, just wait until your opponent actually has one of these in play, and you will understand just how brutal Elesh Norn is.
I was really fond of this Spirits tribal deck back in like I think it was the first Innistrad. It had Drogskull Captain and Geist of St. Traff. These are some old cards, and what you need to know is that they're mostly 2/2s, and the spirit tokens for like from Lingering Souls are mostly 1/1. And I got to play against in a Pro Tour qualifier. I got to play against a guy who just birthing potted, in Birds of Paradise, birthing pod, and I don't remember what it took to get there, but like turn 3 had an Elesh Norn in play, and there was just no creature in my entire deck that was going to survive. It was just, I was like, all right, I'm done. That was I had a good time. Shake the hand, sign the slip, go find the door.
Yeah,
eat my sorrows in pizza, man.
She is a murderator, dude. Like, nice creatures.
Yeah.
Like, imagine playing an Elves deck and having your opponent resolve Elesh Norn. It's just GG.
Yeah. And I don't know if this will come to Historic, but if it does, this will be anything that can tutor up a creature, ramp to a creature. I don't know if you're going to emerge an ultimatum into this, but you can. And reanimate a creature. Like, this is an important part of the puzzle.
She gets it done, for sure.
I hope we get her, to be honest. I'm down with seeing Muxus players cry.
Me too, yeah. I think that it probably will happen, so the question is just whether it's now. Okay, next card here. It's an iconic one, CGB. It is one of the more iconic Magic cards ever printed. Merfolk Looter, 1 and a blue creature Merfolk rogue at 1/1, and it has this famous text: tap, draw a card, then discard a card. This card is the reason that ability is referred to as looting.
It is. I'm intrigued to see where it fits into Historic because it has oddly relevant types. We never cared that it was a rogue back in my day, but now you do. You also have a lot of ways to use your graveyard, such as Mizzix's Mastery and Unburial Rights. Merfolk is still a lingering deck that casual players do a lot. I'm curious what's going to happen with Merfolk Looter. I think that there's a chance it could show up somewhere. I also think there's a chance that the world is too fast and too furious for Merfolk Looter. Why would you play this when you can play Faithless Looting? I don't know. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that was my read on it, is that I feel like Magic has passed the Merfolk Looter by. But I mean, you're not wrong. Has relevant types, has a relevant ability. I mean, 2 mana for a 1/1. It's kind of rough.
Yeah. We'll see.
we'll see how it turns out. All right, how about Reverse Engineer?
3 blue for a sorcery, draw 3 cards with Improvise. And if you recall Improvise, you can tap artifacts to pay the cost of this card. This is another Aether Revolt card that wasn't in the Kaladesh Remastered for some reason. It was
fluffers.
Yeah, what the hell? But we're still doing this. We're still bringing back Kaladesh cards we couldn't program before, I guess. But back in the day, Reverse Engineer was it was part of the Improvise inspired statuary paradoxical outcome deck in numbers of like 2 or 3. And I don't know if that deck needs this. Like, maybe we'll see it here and there. It does have kind of this combo-y, stormy potential that they're trying to push. But we haven't seen the paradoxical outcome deck make any waves.
No, I agree. But yeah, this is definitely a combo card. Just keep that in your mind if you're going to play this. It's in some combo deck. But, the interesting thing is, like, a lot of those artifact decks as their artifacts they would be tapping, just, have like mana rocks and stuff that already generate mana, right? So they basically have different ways of abusing stuff. But yeah, reverse engineer. I mean, if this card costs you two blue mana, it is a very powerful card. So.
And you can pay that improvised cost with the next card on our list, Relic of Progenitus, which is one colorless artifact that taps to have target player exile a card from their graveyard, or for one, exile the relic to exile all cards from all graveyards and draw a card. This is a card with modern levels of pedigree. It sees play across formats. It's a solid piece of graveyard hate that can go into any deck. Is this going to make a wave in Historic?
I mean, I was going to ask you, CGB, if this is the most played card in this release.
Wow. Historic. It's definitely one of the less, it's probably one of the least flashy cards in it. But as far as a practical tool that can be played all over the place, you could see this in all kinds of decks and sideboards. 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 4, depending on your strategy and how else you can use it.
So, here's a 3-sentence phrase that you don't see on Grafdigger's Cage, that you don't see on Tormod's Crypt, that you don't see on Rest in Peace. Draw a card.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And for the soul, in order to draw a card off of Soul Guide Lantern, you don't get to exile the whole graveyard. So the fact that Relic of Progenitus does what it does and then draws you a card is like kind of amazing.
You also can pay the 1 and draw the card even if the relic is tapped. And that's relevant because if you're out there picking on their graveyard by using the tap ability, but you're holding up mana to possibly do something else with, and you just want it around to keep their graveyard suppressed, you can't be on end step, I tap my relic, they exile a card, then they say, okay, now that your relic is tapped, I disenchant your relic. Like, you can then be like, okay, I pay 1 and exile everything and draw a card. You still get a card out of the deal, unless they have Crows and Grip for split second, but that's a whole other thing.
So yeah, I mean, even just like this card can read like a sorcery, 2 colorless mana, exile all graveyards, draw a card, right? That's just a very good Magic card, and then it's basically all upside from there. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if this replaces Grafdigger's Cage or Rest in Peace or whatever necessarily, but I would be surprised if this didn't end up being one of the more impactful cards for Historic from this release.
So think about how Grafdigger's Cage kind of does collateral damage. If you're a Collected Company deck, you can't play Grafdigger's Cage. You can play Relic of Progenitus. It only attacks the graveyard. It doesn't keep your Collected Companies from being awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, like, here's just another thing, right? Like, so let's say you sideboard in your 2 Grafdigger's Cages and you draw both of them. Like, let's say you're looking at an opening. If you're looking at an opening hand with both of them, it's kind of a rip, right? Yeah. Whereas with Relic, like, you draw 2 of them, good to go. No worries.
Say you have Lurrus and a Grafdigger's Cage. You kind of Nambo yourself. Say you have Lurrus and a Relic of Progenitus. You have a draw engine, kinda. You do have to exile the Relic, but I mean, you can also get Relic out of the graveyard and keep attacking the opponent's graveyard, and there's nothing they can do much about it until they get rid of the Lurrus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this card sees play in lots of formats for a reason. So yeah, really, really strong card.
And do I see this right? It's a common. Easy craft.
It is a common.
If you don't want to buy the set, easy craft.
Boom. Let's go. Another common they released was Ray of Revelation. 1 and a white instant. Destroy target enchantment. Flashback for a green. So it's basically like the Ancient Grudge, except for enchantments.
Yeah, solid. Enchantments are what you need to kill. You want to kill that Leyline of the Void, I suppose.
Yep, totally. And, here's another thing to note as well. Selesnya, fairly playable color in Historic right now. Color combo, so yeah, nice. All right, how about this next foundational card here, CGB Stifle.
1 blue for an instant, counter target activated or triggered ability. That's it. So I want to preface this one by saying you're probably going to win our little wager that something from the anthology from the archive would be banned. It looks like we're recording on the 14th. There's a league weekend tomorrow. I should have said till the 18th because I should have made it go through ban Monday, the day after the league weekend, if I were smart. But it looks like you're going to win that one. And that's cool. But I also look at this as what's happened to Historic that we haven't had a lot of time to talk about here on the show because of all the new cards and announcements is Tainted Pact. Like that deck is... Like you and Danny talked about it. Like that deck has really taken over Historic and has proved to be every bit as dangerous as people feared. Stifle can stifle the trigger from Thassa's Oracle and leave it for 1 blue, just leave it so that the Tainted Pact deck just exiled their library but didn't win the game. And this might be a printing designed to attack that interaction.
Could be. Yeah, it could be. Because it's true. I mean, people have been finding creative ways to get around that, but Stifle is the only way that I can think of which both prevents you from losing and guarantees your opponent dies in the same breath, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and it's cheap. It's appropriately priced for what you need to happen.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Apart from stuff like that, though, Stifle probably doesn't show up, right?
So Stifle is it has a legacy and vintage level pedigree, but that's because of fetched lands, because there are so many lands that are like Fabled Passage in those formats, and you can counter the Fabled Passage activation. And doing that on turn 1 or 2 is just straight up land destruction for 1 mana. But
that's so brutal.
It is. But Stifle in Historic isn't going to get that opportunity nearly as often, and when it does, it will be much later in the game. So I am curious to see like what we stifle. We stifle a Muxus Trigger, maybe?
Well, so that kind of highlights the fact that we have God, what's that card called? It's the counter spell. Say it again.
Tail's End.
Tail's End, that's the one, right? So that adds countering a legendary creature to the text.
Yep.
So I feel like if you, I don't know, don't you just run Tail's End instead?
I think so. And you can hit Demonic Pact with this, but it really is just about the Tainted Pact, like how early it threatens that kill with Thassa's Oracle that makes this card potentially a player, because it's such a huge difference to hold up 1 mana or 2 mana on turn 3, which is how early that thing can go off. Yep,
that's a really good point. So surgical answer to specific problems. All right, Vault Scourge. 1 and a Phyrexian black mana. This is an artifact creature imp, a flying lifelink 1/1. Oh boy, CGB, are you stoked to cast a 1 mana flying lifelink 1/1 which burns you for 1?
Absolutely not, but you're probably going to tell me your Tempered Steel deck just got another big upgrade.
Tempered Steel is into this card, yep. Just cut those Ornithopters out of your deck and replace them with Vault Scourges and just feel great about it.
Forget that Ancient Grudge thing. This is fine. Like, we got this. We got this. Kolaghan's Command, no problem.
All over it. This card seems like the least powerful card in this whole release. But, it has Phyrexian mana in it, so it's by definition busted.
They should have just given us Dismember, like a really playable black Phyrexian mana card.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, supposing this card cost 2 Phyrexian black mana, how good would it be? That's
pretty awesome. That's just a free spell in a world where there's like Storm and other stuff going on. Death Shadow might want to pay 4 life and then gain it back 1 at a time, or just not even attack. Yeah, it's a much different card if that were the case.
Do you think that a card like that would be like dangerous? Like, do you think a card like that would get banned in like older formats and stuff?
I don't think so.
No, neither do I. It's just interesting. It's interesting to think about a tweak you could make to make this card go from being like just an absolute meme, horrible card to, playable, interesting card.
Yep. Such thought experiments are fun.
Indeed. So that is the historic anthology, at least as it has been revealed to us so far. So after looking at all of these cards, what's your opinion, man? How does this stack up compared to some of the other historic anthology releases?
It might be the best one.
It's pretty good, right?
So here's the thing about it that I like they always try to punch some nostalgia feels in these anthologies by giving the Timmies and the Spikes some cards that they enjoyed from their past. And we've talked about the purpose of the anthology. Is it to push the historic metagame? No, I think it's just to sell a nostalgia type feeling. I think this version is more successful than others have been at cards that might affect the meta, and at the very least capture the imagination and make people want to try them. And there's several of them, like Atarka's Command, Ramoka's Command, and the Rakdos one, Koligan's Command.
Koligan's Command, yeah.
Those should all probably see, or at least be tested in a number of decks. The Dragonstorm combo deck that we outlined is 100% something that is worth experimenting with. Finding ways to cheat out the Praetors, especially the blue one for me, is something that I'm excited to do. And having a tool like a Stifle to attack a very specific combo deck problem makes this at least a consideration. I think that more than normal is, and let's add to the fact that there are at least 4 mythics here. Like the Praetors are mythics. Crafting those is a lot harder. So if the price tag of this is the same, then you're getting more mythic bang and wildcard bang than you did before. I think that makes this a buy if you are into playing around in historic. If you are trying to just get into historic, you probably shouldn't buy this. You should probably craft a good historic deck. But if you are just getting the cards to mess around in historic, if it's kind of a fun thing for you, I think this is a buy.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think there's enough here. The commands really help to round it out. I think that you get enough for your money. And they've included a lot of very relevant cards here, just like good sideboard cards, good cards that just make the format a little bit more well-rounded, cards that could actually enable new archetypes, which is, it's one of the reasons why Faithless Looting is such an important card, right? Because it not only is it a strong card, but it makes people consider building decks they otherwise wouldn't have considered building. And, that's often the most important thing to add to a format. And, we don't have anything like Faithless Looting power level in this list, I don't think, but these cards are definitely going to get the gears turning. And I think that we will see some, at least in the very least, some sideboards will be changing. So yeah, pretty sweet overall. I hope that historic anthologies continue to look like this. Good job. All right. That's going to wrap up another long and winding episode of the ArenaCraft Podcast, a show dedicated exclusively to Magic the Gathering Arena.
And soccer.
Thanks. And soccer, yes. Well, it's the year 2021. We have to expand. So you can find this show on Spotify. Note that, yes, you can find the show on Spotify. Basically, like every week, I have someone asking me where it is. It's there. Just look for it. You might have to put a space between Arena and Craft.
Okay, and you might have to scroll.
Yes, exactly. It is.
I'm subscribed on Spotify. I promise. I'm subscribed on Spotify.
So it is there. So it's on Spotify. We're also on all of the other usual platforms, Apple Podcast, etc. You can also listen and watch and see all of the card images that we talk about on Covert Go Blue's YouTube channel. So definitely go there if you want value added. And if you want to support the podcast financially, you can now do so over at patreon.com/ArenaCraftPodcast. So go show your support there. We really appreciate it. And thanks, Crafties. Looking forward to bringing you the same stuff you enjoy next week.
Later, Crafties. True fact, I brush my teeth before streaming.
Have fun with that bottle brush.